Hi friends, it's Michelle here from happyhealthyher.com. Welcome back to my channel. This week's compassionate chat is about a topic that might feel a little bit uncomfortable. We're going to be talking about the power of anger and how to use it for our healing. So please stick with me to the end. We're going to go into some really powerful tools to help to dispel anger and actually harness it for our healing. But first, we're going to get into some of the details about anger. There are really a lot of things in the world right now to be angry about, if you hadn't noticed. I mean, to start, it feels like life really doesn't feel very fair. There's a lot of injustice, there's a lot of inequity, and in particular, we've been quite disempowered and even gaslit, especially over the past several years and since the pandemic. I mean, we've lost a lot of things collectively. Many things about the way our world functions are different. And in addition to all the grief that we've had from the losses, we've got a lot of frustration, and that often will show up as anger. And so people are very angry, and for very good reason. And so I think we start with just validating that fact, that if you're angry, it's for good reason. We're often shamed for having or expressing anger. Culturally, it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable for men. It's too aggressive. It's not acceptable for women. It's not very nice. And that's not true, though. We have to be able to express our emotions in order for us to be healthy. Emotions are energy in motion. And when they come up for us, we have to be able to recognize them and sort of just let them go, because they're messengers. They're telling us really important information about what we need to know about our environment, about our needs, and even around our values. So just a really interesting subtext for this, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do this video was because for years I've been in an empath group. I consider myself to be an empath, very sensitive to energy, emotions, and feelings. And the group I'm in is predominantly women. And every so often, probably every couple of months, someone posts something about being really angry about something and being so upset with themselves because they're so angry, and why am I so angry, and I really shouldn't be angry, and I don't know how to deal with this. And I always comment because I think this is something I learned in my master's degree, in that there really are no negative emotions, and you really don't want to be dismissing them, because if you are angry, it's probably because there's something in your life that's making you angry. Maybe a person, maybe a particular situation. I mean, like I mentioned with the pandemic, the lockdowns and the changes in all the way that we were told to vaccinate and all the different things felt very confusing and very frustrating and very disempowering. And so, of course, that's going to cause some level of anger, which is really, it's frustration, but it's going to come out as anger. So I do think it's really important to note that this isn't something to shame. If you shame or guilt it yourself, meaning you will actually push that energy down, and it will get trapped in your body. When we do not express and release our emotions, they get trapped in our energy field. And that's why we have things like shoulder aches and back pain and high blood pressure and heart disease. It's very common for a build-up to anger to lead to just a variety of different health concerns. So it's really just important that you're seeing it for what it is and you're letting it move through your body. In 2021, actually, I had a really interesting perspective on this, and I found something on Oprah.com. She had interviewed Sister Joan Chittister, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but really lovely woman of faith. And she was saying that she did not want to get rid of her anger. She wanted to harness it because it was fuel. It helped to fuel her work, her advocacy, and it just gave me such insight and clarity around how true that is. That when something actually triggers us as being unjust or difficult or frustrating and we want to fight back against it, that's powerful. And it's great to harness that rather than dismiss it. Anger also alerts us to a variety of different things. It tells us what we're passionate about. It tells us what really needs our attention. Sometimes it might be a personal interaction that's not going well, and it's alerting you to something. It might be a work situation, also kind of showing you, hey, this isn't really feeling great. What you're not willing to accept is also going to show up as anger. So again, like with relationships or things, if someone is crossing your boundaries, you're likely to be angry, and that's a trigger to you to say, hey, this is not okay. It also tells us what we want to change and what we want to work on, and also where we have been hurt. Because the interesting thing about anger is it's often not just anger for anger's sake. It's often, the root cause is often something deeper. Sadness, grief, like I mentioned, frustration a couple times. It could be even insecurities. And it really is often telling us someone has hurt us. And the way that we're dealing with that is by lashing out in anger. So you probably already know that anger is also biological. It's triggered. Testosterone has actually been associated with assertiveness and aggression and anger. So you get the hormone component, but then of course, when you get into fight or flight, you have adrenaline, which will also ramp up your body. It's going to tense your muscles. It's going to race your heart. It's going to help make you get warm and flushed. And those are all biological triggers that ultimately will feel like anger rising in your body. And so the key is to sort of ride with them rather than fight them. Because like I said, if you repress and you push it down, they get stuck. So you just kind of ride it out, and you try to do that in healthy ways that we're going to talk about in just a moment. But suppression is not the goal. Releasing the anger in healthy and balanced ways really is the goal. So it is important, of course, to talk about healthy and unhealthy ways of expressing anger. Unhealthy is clearly the repression, or the reverse, raging at other people, being violent, or screaming or attacking other people. Of course, that is not the healthy approach. And most of us don't struggle with that so much. But another piece that's really not so healthy, which is probably far more common, is being passive aggressive and not directly confronting someone, avoiding confrontation out of fear or just pushing it aside. Now, I am totally someone who does this from time to time. This is definitely something that codependents struggle with, because we have trouble being direct or letting people know our clear boundaries. We want other people to like us, and we don't want to be confrontational or difficult. So we end up being a little bit more passive. And then the interesting thing, though, is when we do that, eventually the energy builds up and we get resentment, and ultimately that will be released. And we will all at some point get angry. So this is a personal issue that I have myself, and I know I have to work on this all the time. So if you've been following my channel at all, you also know that I talk quite a bit about narcissists and narcissistic abuse. And of course, I got to bring it up again. So the interesting thing about having a narcissist in your life, if you're someone who's feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't know why I keep getting angry, you might want to look at who's triggering that anger, because narcissists often trigger our emotions. In my course and book, Free from Narcissists, I actually go into 29 different tactics. And I probably missed some, if you can believe that. But 29 different tactics that narcissistic people will use to manipulate other people and control them and sort of get energy from them. And one of the sort of weirdest, but quite consistent, is that they will ignite a person's emotions. They will pick at them. They will trigger them. They will, it's almost like, I like to say, kicking the bear or poking the bear. It's like they're constantly prodding at you. They're constantly gaslighting you. Little things over and over and over again. And you put up with it, and you put up with it, and you put up with it. And then eventually you explode like a volcano. And they sit there with their popcorn watching the show. They love it. They love when you react in any way. If you're sad, if you're crying, if you're yelling, if you're upset, they feel very, very powerful because they've gotten you to react. And so the hard thing is, if you are on the receiving end of this and you're a conscientious, considerate person, you're likely to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got so angry. Why did I get so angry? And then on top of that, the narcissist is pointing their finger at you going, oh my gosh, why are you so angry? You're so violent. You're so terrible. Man, like, you really should work on that. And it's really interesting because they know very well that they triggered you, and they're loving that they were able to do that. And so the great thing about being aware of this is that you can keep yourself more in check, and you can honor, like, when you have a reaction like that, you can step back and say, okay, I can see why this happened, and I need to be more careful around this person. I need to protect myself further around them, because really, they're not really safe for you emotionally. They're going to probably do that again in some capacity. So the interesting thing in general about narcissistic relationships is that they will often cause us to feel angry just because we're so frustrated by the maddening behaviors that are taking place. They're not logical, and their behavior is not kind or consistent. It's really erratic. And so your reaction, your anger reaction, is a very normal response to an abnormal situation. And so I think it's really important to, again, give yourself a pass and say, what are these emotions really telling me? Because really what our emotions are trying to do many times is protect us. So now let's get into the tips I mentioned around releasing the anger in healthy ways. One of my favorites, and I talk about this a lot in my work, but one of the best things to do to release energy and emotions is to just dance. Dance, put on some fast music and move your body. You could dance, or there's another practice that's just called shaking. I mean, and it's just like what it sounds like. You're shaking your hands, you're shaking your arms and your legs, you're moving your body, you're swirling your hips around. And what that's doing is just like releasing all that kinetic energy, all the built up emotion. It may sound silly, it may make you feel a little silly. So lock yourself in a room by yourself and do this, until you feel better. And many times it doesn't take that long to get yourself feeling better, especially if you got a really awesome playlist. I'm actually going to include a link to some of my favorite playlists below, because music is so powerful for me in many ways in terms of helping to release our emotions. But this is one way that I think is especially fun. The other thing to do in terms of movement is you strengthen your core. Your core, the center of your body, right around your belly button, is where your solar plexus is. And our solar plexus is our source of power. It's in terms of our chakra system. It's where our power comes from. And when you strengthen that core, you actually strengthen the solar plexus. And many times when we do have anger, that's where it's arising. It's arising from that pit of our belly. But if you get strong and you work on that, you can help to kind of release that energy. Another great practice I love is tapping, or emotional freedom technique. I'm going to link to a page on my website where I detail that, but there's free apps. There's things on YouTube where you can follow along, but it's a very powerful way to sort of just release the energy in your meridians. And you can do it with the intent of releasing your anger. Another great tool is to just scream. Now, I'm not suggesting you just do a primal scream just in your neighborhood, because that might scare people. But in a pillow, you can do it, or you can get in your car and go out to a remote area and scream. But that's a really great way to kind of release your energy. Oh, here comes Gladys, or Gracie. The other thing, in terms of, like I mentioned, the dancing and the cardio, just listening to fast music. I used to have, when I had a really narcissistic boss when I was in my early 20s, I would listen to my anger playlist when I was driving home, and it just made me feel much better. It helped me kind of release that pent-up energy from the day. One of my favorites for this is Limp Bizkit's Break Stuff. Now, it's it actually always makes me laugh. That's part of why I think that I like it. But, there's swearing, and there's a lot of it just helps you release, and it makes you feel better. So on that note, swearing will also help you to release anger. So there was a Netflix series called The History of Swear Words, and this is one of the things I think they talked about. There's actually been studies where if you're swearing, it helps you to endure a difficult task for longer, because it's literally releasing that pent up energy, that challenging energy. And so, I know this isn't going to work for everybody. Some people are really opposed to swearing, but if it's someone who works for you, swearing will help you. So the other thing is that you could burn stuff. This is kind of funny, and of course I want you to do this safely, but what you could do, if there's a person or a situation in particular that's angering you, you can write it out on a piece of paper, write an angry letter, and of course do not send it. You're just getting out the emotions, so you don't have to deal with them anymore. And then you could either rip it all up, or you could burn it outside in like a fire pit in a safe way. And the act of doing that, you're setting an intention to release all that negative energy. Another thing to do that I really love, and I highly suggest this in many different facets, but is to journal, where you're actually asking yourself, why am I so angry? And then you're drilling down to all of the possibilities. Because the truth is, like I said, many times what we're angry about is not really what we're angry about, or what we think we're angry about is not really what we're angry about. There's a root that is something different. It could be you think you're just mad, but really you're sad, or you're frustrated, or you're disempowered, or you've been hurt by someone too many times and it's coming up as anger. By journaling this out, you're helping to release it, but you're also helping to give yourself clarity, which I think is super powerful. So the other thing is, we've talked in the past about self-love exercises, and you can redirect that anger energy toward love. It's not always the easiest thing to do when you're in the moment, but once you kind of worked through some of that anger, you could do Ho'oponopono, which like I said, we've talked about. Just repeating, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. Just over and over and over. You're releasing that energy, you're setting a positive intention, you're putting out more love into the world, and it's guaranteed to at least give you a feeling of calm when you do that. And I mentioned already a little bit about humor, and that's going to really help too. If you can just laugh at yourself or laugh at a situation, funny movies, a good friend who knows how to lighten the mood, is always going to really help you to sort of disperse the negative anger energy. And then finally, something that is I think is always powerful, is to redirect that anger energy. So anger energy is sort of like a fiery, outward-facing energy. So you redirect it into creating something. If you are an artist, like creating a painting, if you are a writer, writing a poem or writing something, getting all that fuel out onto paper. There's so many ways we create. And so try to harness that energy toward creating something is going to make you feel better. And it's actually going to be bringing in a positive spin on the whole situation. So I really do want to remind you over and over again is that anger is normal and it is healthy. It is your release valve, and you just want to learn how to use it safely so that that negative energy does not build up. So it's very funny. Every time I have done a chat, I've wondered about what should I talk about, and I was trying to decide if I wanted to talk about anger. And then I got direct confirmation in my Facebook feed because Carrie Samuels, who's an astrologer, she was reminding me that our Sun, our Mercury, our Chiron, and the North Node are all in the sign of Aries right now. And Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and it is all about learning to honor yourself. If we haven't been fully honoring ourselves and our needs in putting up safe boundaries, it's highly likely that we're going to be frustrated and a little bit angry. So right now, being Aries season and with all the energy from the eclipses and just this wildfiery time, it's very likely that a lot of us are angry. So I think that that's a powerful reminder too. This video is timeless, but if you're watching it, in April, at the beginning of April, then it's particularly pertinent right now to be thinking about anger and to be releasing and working on our anger. So I really hope this was helpful. If it was, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and so we can talk in future compassionate chats. As always, I wish you good health and happiness. Thanks for being with me.